How are you, Juan?
Doing great.
Yeah.
Okay, it looks like we have a pretty decent sized group, so we can go ahead and get started. Also, we do record these so we can share them after, so just I'm supposed to technically make everyone aware that it is being recorded. Hilary, you ready?
Yeah.
Perfect.
I'm all
So we will start if you can just do maybe a quick little bio background. And then I will launch into some of the questions that we like to ask on Lead 360 to get to know some of our internal leaders a little bit better. So I guess, where'd you start? How'd you get here? All of the things. Maybe like a 2-minute elevator speech version.
a very long elevator ride. I'm excited for that.
It's the Empire State Building, probably.
That makes a lot more sense. Yeah, I could see this. So, yeah, I have a super wide background. It's all ended up in HR or finance. I won't lie, tell everyone, I tried really hard not to be in HR for a long time. Every time I would end up working for a company, either in typically in finance roles, because I love spreadsheets, I love numbers, and I like working with people. And inevitably, I would end up in charge of HR and policies or coaching or doing payroll things and whatever. And so finally, I said, okay, this seems to be where life is taking you, and this does bring you joy. Working with people brings you joy. Let's really delve into that. And then just being open to opportunities. Ended up back in Atlanta for family stuff and found myself here. I've been here for 2.5 years now, and I love it. We have grown so much, and it has been an incredible ride. So, yeah, everything that I do, whether it's working in tech companies, universities, other finance companies, holdings companies, we just opened everything, whatever they felt like buying, we bought and we built. And it was great. And now I'm in the mortgage industry, and it's an awesome way to sort of combine all of that background and history into a place that really fuels that. So that's me. That's where I got into the HR life.
Well, we are very happy that you found your way to mortgage because we're so lucky to have you. Also, I don't think I said this part. If anyone has any questions they'd like specifically for Hilary to cover in the next 30 minutes or so, feel free to put them in the chat, and I will keep an eye on it and read them off and definitely get to them. But great place to start, our favorite place to start. When you wake up in the morning, what's your morning routine? What gets you going, amped, ready to go for the day?
Ooh, that's a terrible question to ask. So the first thing I do is I take my ADHD medicine. That's number one, super important to do. No, I really like waking up with purpose. So typically when I wake up in the morning, I try not to look at my phone, mostly because my therapist tells me not to do that. But so I don't typically wake up and look at my phone. I'll usually get up, I'll wander around. I do morning stretches, and I have a meditation app that I make my current roommates do with me in the morning, and they also love it. And then I'll usually make a coffee, and I'm one of those people that still gets papers. So I like to do the morning crossword for a little bit to try to wake up my brain while my first cup of coffee kicks in. And then I'll go to my phone, and I'll usually I've got different HR groups. So I'll take a look at there's a thing called HR Brew that I really like. And there's an HR Slack group that I'm in, and there's a couple other small ones. And I'll kind of look at the tidbits and what's happening in the industry, what's going on around the pulse in the country, especially, and just sort of get a feel for that. And then at that point, I'm usually very distracted and go, oh, I have to leave for work. And then I just jam out to music on my way, and that's my life. From there on, you will always see me with music going on somewhere, at least in my head. So yeah.
Well, I definitely am a victim of the check my phone immediately when I wake up before I even say good morning. So if you have any tips on breaking that habit, we should connect offline because I definitely need them.
Yeah.
Obviously, as the VP of HR, you are a leader within our company. What would you say is kind of your leadership styles? And second part to this question, what are kind of important values to you that you like to really hone in on as a leader and try and make a focus of your leadership and just work in general?
Sure. I'm probably going to have to ask you to repeat the second question, but in terms of...
Yeah, that was a lot. I thought of the second question as I was getting through the first one, so I can definitely do that.
I love it. Yeah, so in terms of the first question, my leadership style is definitely more of a servant leadership approach. So I try to be very mindful of others and looking for what is their communication style, what is their need, where are their strengths and their weaknesses. Typically, if I see someone, especially like in my team, where I notice like, hey, this is an area for improvement, I'm usually going to ask two questions. I'm going to ask them, one, how can I help? How can I be better so that your goals are very clear, so that your process is very defined and understood, so you know that you have a safe space. So I will ask, what did I do wrong? Where can I be better to make that easier for you, so that there's no miscommunication on things. There's no questions about where stuff is. And then the second question that I'll ask is, how can I support you? Because typically I find that a lot of people want to do good and they want to be good. That's why I am in HR, is because humans will always make mistakes, but I think that their intentions are in the right place. And a lot of times they just need a little bit of focus, or they need to know a little bit of guideline or boundary in terms of, this is how this organization functions, and how we can improve that so that they can still be uniquely them and know that they're supported, but they're doing it in a way that's improving it. So a lot of times in terms of my leadership style, I try to be very open. I try to be very engaging. I try to be empathetic to the degree that I can be, so that we're coming to solutions and it's not like a disciplinary thing. It's more of a, how can we work together for the betterment? How can I push you to be better, to think outside the box and to think about yourself? So in terms of leadership style, it tends to be more of a servant leadership, where the goal is, how can I help you help me, basically. Them being able to succeed, them being able to improve, them being able to speak to their success makes them more confident in their positions, which brings me a lot of joy, basically. But as a leader, it also means that it's a lot less hand-holding that I have to do. It allows them to give more free space to be able to make mistakes, or to figure out where their place is, to be uniquely themselves and to be the best version of themselves. Do I get it right all the time? Nope. But that's sort of like my leadership style, and the goal there is that I can create a space where someone's not afraid to make a mistake, but they can still have a place where they can own it. And we can work through that together so that they feel like it's theirs and it's their ultimate responsibility, and things that they can be comfortable and confident in taking on.
So the second part to the question, what values are most important to you as a leader that you try and, really showcase and strengthen within your team?
Ooh, I have so many. I would say at the top would probably be like constant curiosity. Engagement is a big value of mine. The ability to question things, the ability to not just think that people are trying to get away with something. I think a lot of times in HR, we deal with the not good side of stuff a lot, right? So we're the people that it's like, hey, this is the company policy, we've got to enforce it. And we sort of help to find that gray area of, is this policy restricting people's individuality? Is it restricting their ability to succeed? Or is it necessary in order to give them room to feel comfortable with their growth? So I always ask my teams, things that I value hugely is creativity and curiosity, constantly asking questions, constantly asking, is this the right way? Is there a better way? Is there another way? Being flexible, having that sort of ability to make mistakes and be comfortable in asking yourself questions. Like, I would call it vulnerability and the ability to be vulnerable, because I think some of that comes with the ability to take chances and the ability to ask questions, the ability to push limits. So I value those a lot. I also value sort of that sense of empathy. I don't think we can't sympathize with people, right? I am who I am. I have the experiences that I have. And the only way that I can ever empathize with folks is by having a listening ear. So people that want to have the value of, let me ask questions first and listen second. Let me then focus before I make a decision, or before I jump to a conclusion. Let me keep an open mind. So having that sense of empathy, having that sense of curiosity, I'd say with the two biggest values that I respect a lot, because I think that, especially in our side, there's never a true fact to anything. When you're in the HR world and you're dealing with people, you're never going to get the entire story, and it's never going to be 100% accurate. So being able to have an open space where you're listening, where you're coming with open ideas, where you're coming with sort of a blank slate and you're sort of playing a puzzle to be like, well, how can we get as close to the truth as possible? How can we play around with this? Is there gray area here? How do we keep some fun and enjoyment in our lives so that we're able to focus where what's needed is there? And then I would say, I don't know if it's a value so much as like an eagerness to automate. So I tell people a lot of the times, like, if you think of a traditional HR person, I am a terrible HR person. My goal is to do as little policy work as possible. And the way that I do that is by making things more educational and more transparent. We're all adults and we're humans, and we've been raised on how to treat people with respect and how to treat people with fairness. Sometimes we need some gentle reminders. But a lot of times, if you can make things accessible for people, and if you can make them available to them to where they can get the information themselves, 90% of the time they're going to do that. They're going to look for their own answers. They're going to try to solve things if they can. And so my job is to help make that happen. So the things that I'm then focusing on are the crucial conversations and the growth conversations and that curiosity of how can we get better. So it's something that I tend to look for in my teams. It's something I value a lot, is people that are finding ways to get out of their way, essentially. How can I, as a general person, find a way to automate this process, to make this process more efficient, to make it more accessible, so that the questions that I'm getting, I can spend more time and value on because they're important. It brings me back to the people. So those are some of the values and things that I appreciate a lot, and that definitely ring true to me when I meet those in other people as well.
Okay, so you mentioned, which kind of made me laugh, HR frequently has to deal with the not so fun things. So speaking of not so fun things, can you tell us about a time when you failed and what you learned from it and what you took from it to get better for future versions of Hilary?
Oh dear, I fail a lot. And I think the goal in life is to always fail up. I think that you're going to make mistakes, and some people look at those as failures, and I tend to be overly critical when it comes to those things. I mean, I've got many examples. I would say, truth be told, I think one of the things that I would say that I failed at was more recent. It was in this company, and it was not asking for help sooner. So when I think a lot about my ability to grow and my ability to help this company grow, I noticed when we had a ton of growth in the company from second half of 2020 into the second half of 2021, we were growing a lot. we were hiring, I mean, Valoria will remember these days, we were hiring 30 to 40 people a month. And it was incredible scale. And it was a lot of fun. It was so many names, and I knew every single one of them coming into the store. I knew every one of your faces. And I made it a point to do that. I made it a point to make sure that I knew who you were and where you belonged, and why you were here. And I think I took too much pride in that and too much sense of responsibility that I didn't ask for help sooner. And I didn't go to, the owners, and I didn't say, I need someone and you need someone. And there was a period of time before we got D and then before we got Chardonnay where a lot of that service was really falling. And there was a statement that I started hearing people say, and it kind of broke my heart, because they would say, hey, I know you're busy, but, or they'd say like, hey, I know you have so much other stuff going on, but can you help me? And that broke my heart to hear. And so that was a failure to me, because I let sort of like my ambition, my fear to lead, because I hadn't managed a team in a while, that I let that fear create a pain point and create a lack of accessibility to employees who really needed it. And that was something that I have learned from, and that I don't do as much. I'm still learning, right? It's always a growth pattern, but I would say one of the biggest ways that you can fail is to not step out of your way. And it's to not take a step back and saying, is what I'm doing really helpful for everyone? Or could I be better by asking for help, by getting resources to help others? So now that our team has grown, our service has grown significantly, because we have people that can specifically answer your payroll questions. We have people that can specifically answer your new hire questions, so that new hires coming on board have a direct contact and someone that they can rely on. So that was probably my most recent, and one of my biggest failures that I would say was not being vulnerable and asking for that. And that led to a service issue, and that led to some people feeling like they didn't have help, or they were on a lonely island. And I don't want them to ever feel that way. And the only way that I can do that is by admitting when I need help and asking for it. So that was a big lesson for me to learn. And that's been a hard one to swallow, of like, yeah, you can't do everything. And I'm like, are you sure? I could try. So not doing that anymore is a big function for me. It's something that I strive to work on a lot. I would say that's been one of my biggest failures, has been something to really conquer and to rebuild that trust that was lost in that process as well.
Well, while I don't doubt your ability to handle everything on your own, we are all blessed to have known Dean Chardonnay because of that. So I say that's something great that came out of of what you're defining as a failure.
Yeah. I mean, there's
so
battle stories, but the trust, losing someone's trust, I think, is a failure. Because I think when you're building a business, when you're being a leader, you're not going to have all the answers, and you're not going to do everything right. But if people trust you to make the best decision at the time, that's huge. So if you lose that trust, that to me is a sign of failure, because it usually means that something else, like a fear or a pride or an ego, was getting in the way that prevented that. So working through that has been fun, and we still have a ways to go. But I think we're definitely building that process.
Well, I know that was a hard one, so I'll give you a more fun one next. In your career so far, or as a leader specifically or not, is there like a very memorable moment that, when you think back on your career, you're like, this is one of those moments that like I will remember forever?
Oh, I have a lot of those. I mean, the benefit of working in HR is like, yes, I see the sad and I see the hurt and I see the pain, but I see all the joy. So the number of like people I know that have had children, or people that I know that we've celebrated their marriage or celebrated their divorce, it's just being a part of their lives is incredibly memorable for me. And I try my best to remember every single person's like new kid, because I think it's great. There was There were a couple of things. I would say there's two experiences that particularly stand out when it comes to I will never forget this moment. The first one was I had written a grant request when I worked for Florida State University for a long time, and part of my job was grant writing. And I had gotten a tech grant from the state of Florida that at the time was the largest grant they had ever, like single grant that they had ever given out. And we used that grant specifically for all things accessible. So we took one of our theaters that was very old, and we redid the whole thing. It took us like 6 months. We redid the whole thing so that it not only had better sensories, but it had, for those with hard of hearing, it had hearing aids that also walked them through and engaged with them. For people who were had vision impairments, it gave them the hearing aids would actually tell them where they were, and they could turn around and say, hey, you're looking at this sign of this poster, or you're looking at a TV that is showing you blah, blah, blah. Or they'd say, hey, you've entered into a black box theater style. We ask that you be quiet. It would say, we're going to play some music for you. It had more ramps and accessibility so that everyone could participate in the arts, where before they might not have been able to. We made it more accessible to them. And I remember the first show that we launched, there was a little girl. She was a student at the theater, and she was in a wheelchair, and she had like physical impairments that were a lot. And she came up to a couple of us afterwards, and she said, I want to thank you so much for bringing this to me. She's like, I work in theater in the costume studio. And she was like, this was the first show I was actually able to not only go to, because I could get there the entire time. There were no stairs anywhere. Everything was ramp and had levers to like rest your arms and stuff like that. She's like, this was the first show that I could actually not only attend, but that I could fully engage in because you gave that to me. And I almost cried a bit because I was like, you deserve this. And I was like, everyone deserves this. Everyone deserves to have joy in their life. And that one was huge. And then I think the second one, I'd worked for a holdings company, and we'd open a restaurant and in Alabama. And the restaurant opening was a blast. But for me, what made it so memorable was coming back a year later, and 99% of the staff was the original staff from the first year that we hired them. And so I came into that moment, and 3 of them had been promoted into like supervisory things. And all of them like, we have to get a photo. It's our 1-year anniversary. We have to get a photo. And we were missing 2 people from the original hire. That was it. And that moment stayed so much with me because it was like, we did something. We brought purpose to people's lives that in a restaurant industry, which is unheard of, we're still there a year later, and that we'd been able to promote them. So being able to see that, that was like extremely rewarding for me. Those 2 things were like, yeah, this is why you work with people, and this is why you do what you do. But yeah.
That's awesome. And
Thanks.
I almost teared up during the first story. So that
really
sweet.
was my favorite. The number of times that people couldn't get to something. They couldn't get to class. They couldn't get to a show. They couldn't get to an art place because there wasn't accessibility. Even the parking garage here in Atlanta at Fox Theater, you're in the parking garage and there's elevators everywhere. And the only way to get to the exit to go over to the theater is to walk up 10 steps. And that drives me crazy. So being able to make an impact, to bring something to someone that enjoyed it, and to remove a boundary for them that prevented them from being able to do what they would truly love to do, that was huge for me.
Okay. Well, we don't have a ton of time left, so I have just a couple more.
Sure.
What specifically, like professionally or at First Option, are you the most excited about in the next month and in the next year?
Ooh. Okay, now that open enrollment is over, I'm really excited about that. I would say in the next month, I am really excited about what we're bringing to people in terms of communications. So we've been launching more and more articles and more systems. And here in the next month, we should have, my hope is to have a recruiting platform, a new recruiting platform up. That would make it way better and easier to hire people and to promote jobs and to make all of our hiring stress way easier on new hires and on hiring managers. So it also gives us more customization and qualifying questions and the ability to remove things that don't make a difference, like requiring people to upload your resume and put in every single job that you've had for 10 years. I'm like, well, then what's the point of your resume? Just upload it and be done with the app. So I'm really excited about us launching that. And then I would say, you said over the next 6 months, the rest of the year?
Year or like long term versus short term. If it's happening in 18 months, I won't dock you points.
Fair enough. I'm really excited for some of the educational programs that we're working on. So we just sent out a calendar invite yesterday, for example, for a estate planning wellness webinar that's totally free. And we're doing one in February as well that's all about W-2 financial planning to help people get the most bang out of their buck. And that's going to come with free legal assistance. So people can call and follow up on financial advice for that. And that's just a few of them. We're teaming up with some nonprofits around the country, hopefully, but definitely in Atlanta, that can provide free nutritional wellness classes, and they can provide free financial wellness classes. Pretty much our goal is to really focus on freeing up our folks, right? So freeing them up emotionally, freeing them up mentally. There's a lot of stress in our industry and a lot of stress in our job. And there's more now with, slowing down of available markets and things like that. So us being able to continue to post educational materials, continue to post articles to make things accessible on your mobile apps, on your timeline, being able to launch like the Cigna support system so that people can just call, 13 hours, 14 hours a day, every day, and get help and get access and get referrals to local hospitals or urgent cares. Being able to launch the new telehealth program was really important to us because they can schedule x-rays, they can schedule blood test work, they can tell you exactly where to go so that it's the cheapest thing for you with the best care. You can call them and they can write you prescriptions. You don't even have to go pay and wait to go see a doctor or pay for an urgent care visit. You can just call them and they say, great, your prescriptions are available. Where do you want me to send it? Send it here. Thank you. And it costs you like $10 or $20. There's so much that we are working on, especially now, right? There's a lot of stress. There's a lot of just general uncertainty happening in the world and in the country around us. And our goal in our department is to at least alleviate some of that, or to let you all know that we are here. We're trying to get resources for you. We're trying to make sure that we're launching programs that are beneficial and that are wanted. We thought about launching pet insurance. And then we were like, or we can launch a free legal and financial service to every single person, no matter who you are and where you are and whether you close a loan every day or you close a loan every 6 months with us. This service is totally free. So being able to provide more support, launch programs is huge. We'll be doing a lot more work in Paylocity, as an example, pushing recruitment platforms so that managers don't have to go ask, what's your cell phone? Like, what's your email address? Like, what's your preferred name? Candidate fills all that stuff out, and they don't have to fill it out a second time. Being able to launch more engagement surveys, right? It's huge for us to know where you are and like what you're doing. How can we give you a voice that's really important to us as we go forward? It's just making sure that we're giving as many opportunities to speak up, and to really have a voice. We'll be launching, hopefully, that's my goal, by the end of the year, our 360 feedback forms. So in Paylocity, employees will do reviews on their managers and managers will do reviews on their employees so that we can find out how can we be better? How can we not only as managers give the resources that our employees need, but also give them the feedback that they need to meet those goals? So both of that is pretty important. We've got a lot of large goals, but it all comes down essentially to how can we give better communication, how can we give better access, and how can we give better support. So I'm excited. We've got a lot coming, and we try to launch it. I think the only thing we need to do definitely better is giving probably more advance notice. If we're doing this thing, please go test it. It's not yet official, but like, please go test it. It's out there. So yeah, so we've got a lot of programs. We're going to try to do a lot more focus in consistent communication to really get that information out and let people know what resources we have here to support them.
Well, this is the last question I have because we're coming up on time, but it's one of my favorite ones. If you were not in the mortgage industry or HR, what would you be doing?
Okay. I'd be doing 3 things. Because HR in the mortgage industry is like 10 things, right? So I would definitely be doing 3 things. I would be narrating children's cartoons and audiobooks.
Amazing.
I would
Amazing answer.
100% be doing that. I would probably go back into doing more recording arts again. I do kind of miss it. I don't miss the studio alone time, but I definitely kind of miss being around and creating something musically and like bringing together a song from someone's like vision into the real world. So I'd probably go back into some audio engineering. And then I would probably go build houses for sure. I would just go out there and build houses and then tell all of you about the houses that I built and said, please go sell these. I built you this. And I think that would be like just super fun to do.
So home builder by day, audio engineer by night. Love that.
Yeah, exactly. And then
Who needs
recording
sleep, right?
children's movies on the weekends.
Yeah.
I don't sleep now. That just sounds perfect.
Well, thank you so much, Hilary, for joining us and giving us some insight into your career journey and your leadership style and just kind of how you tick as a person. It's very much appreciated. And thank you everyone for joining. If there's anyone on your team, oh, I lost an AirPod. If there's anyone on your team who didn't have a chance to tune in, the recording of Hilary's session will be posted on My Connect, hopefully later today, maybe tomorrow. And along with that will be the information on next month's Lead 360. So make sure to mark your calendars for that as well. Thanks so much, y'all.
Thanks, everyone. I don't know what to talk about myself, so thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you, Hilary.
You too, Hilary.
Have a great day also.
Thank you. It's sunny here. I love it.